IGTV viewers. I am not perfect. And if you watched last week, that's what we talked about was imperfection and trying to come up with a better word for being imperfect and really claiming that. Maybe, messiness. I like that one a lot better. Hi, Micah. Welcome. All right. Now I'm live on Facebook. Hello. Sorry for the delay. I'm having some technical difficulties tonight. How are we doing? Hello. Welcome to another self-love sermon, dear ones. Once you're here, put a chat below. Let me know what's going on, dear ones. How are we doing tonight? It looks like my stream might be a bit choppy on Facebook as well. I don't know what's going on, but we'll do our best to keep trucking along. So right away, check-in question for you tonight is, how do you feel you're relating right now to the news, to your news consumption? And maybe if that isn't relevant, how are you relating to social media consumption? However you want to define that, however you want to answer it, how are you feeling about your news or your social media consumption tonight, dear ones? Are you feeling there's too much and you're sort of overwhelmed? Do you feel like you're sort of shutting yourself down, burying your head in the sand a bit? Or do you feel it's somewhere in between those two extremes? And are you happy about it? How is it affecting you? However you want to answer that question tonight, dear ones, and I'll repeat it as more people jump on. So tonight's theme, the title of our little sermon tonight is, what if news consumption felt good? Let's dream together. Let's imagine. Let's create and vision and we'll manifest together a new reality where being an informed, awake, conscious citizen could actually feel good and be supported by the environment, by the society. This is something I'm really interested in. And it might feel like a departure from our usual topics, but fear not, we're going to relate this all back to self-love. As always, we're going to do some guided meditation and embodiment and breathing together as always. So you are still in the right place. And we're just going to take it a little more specific tonight, a little more practical application, and co-create some rituals together tonight around the news. Oh, Mike is on Facebook and Instagram. Micah says, oh, it's so overwhelming, but when I try to take a break, I feel guilty and tell myself it's my privilege to be able to turn away from some things. It's hard to find a middle ground where I feel informed, but not overwhelmed with information. Yes, Micah, that's exactly right, and that's why I'm interested in this. It's really hard to find that balance, isn't it, between being an informed, conscious, caring, compassionate citizen and really getting hijacked by the negativity bias, by our nervous system that's trying to keep us safe. And especially right now, I wanted to talk about this because it is so divisive. Like, it's never been more divisive. And so I think it's relevant. I really do. Okay. So, oh, sorry. Thought I was getting a message. Just some housekeeping really quick. I'll be sharing this as I always do at luminousleanings.com, the replay. You can always listen to the audio replay over at my SoundCloud page. Just search for Luminous Leanings. And of course, I send out all the replays in my newsletter. So if you're not signed up for that yet, go ahead and do so. However, you're listening to this tonight, however, you're handling, being present with us tonight, just really take a moment and set the space for yourself. I'm going to start by lighting a candle as always. We are still self-caring tonight, even if it's just me and Micah on here live. We are still self-caring, and whoever is joining us in the replay across time and space, you are with us. Thank you for being here. Just honoring your intention, why you showed up tonight. Honoring that check-in about the news, how you're feeling, how you're relating to it. Honoring you as you are in this moment. Thank you, dear ones. So real quick, housekeeping note. I'm just going to share the link. If you'd like to contribute to my work, please make a donation. And just a reminder to share this with your friends, dear ones. Let them know, like, hey, I'm watching this thing live right now. You might enjoy it too. And another note on that, next week I'm going to be moving all self-love sermons over to my personal pages. So over to at Ellen S. Gilbert on Instagram and at Ellen Gilbert Coaching on Facebook. That's my personal Facebook page. Just moving it over because the algorithms on Facebook really deprioritize business pages, and I want to grow this following. I want to grow this community for all of us. I want to get more people in the pews, so to speak, for these sermons and really spread my message, because that's what it's all about, is self-love and spreading the work of self-love and the good news of self-love. All right, so let's just drop in with a little mindfulness and embodiment right away. So coming to stillness, wherever you are, whenever you're watching this, coming to stillness, dropping into the body, feeling the feet flat on the floor. Take a deep breath in and out. 2 more just like that. In and out. 1 more time. In. Let it go. Noticing the shifts in your body already. Noticing how it feels to be aware of this body sitting here breathing. Without attaching or judging or labeling. What's it like to be here right now? Can you get a sense of yourself when you're hijacked by the news? The last time this happened probably wasn't that long ago. What was it like in your body? Was it a contracting sensation? More shallow breathing, more rapid heartbeat? A tightening of the muscles as though preparing to flee? Or was it a total numbness, depression of the body, a freeze response? Was the thinking simply, I can't deal with this? Once you have a felt sense of what that experience is like, bring a hand to the heart and extend some compassion back through time to that past version of yourself. Perhaps seeing yourself wrapping your arms around yourself as you watch the news, as you read the blog, as you listen to the podcast or the radio. And just send her a message of goodwill and support. Maybe even just saying to her, I'm here, sweetheart. I understand. Taking a deep breath in. Let it go. Slowly blinking the eyes open. Great job, dear ones. I'm wondering, what was that experience like for you? How does it feel in your body when you're hijacked by negative news, by divisive politics, by the constant separation in our society, the othering, the bad othering, meaning the making of people that don't look like us, don't act like us, don't believe like us, bad and different and separate and other. How does it feel for you? For me, it feels tight. It feels really painful, and it's something like the more awake I've been on the spiritual path, it's still just as painful, actually maybe even more painful, because I'm so sensitive to it. And I mean that in the best way possible. I'm proud of my sensitivity. I want to feel the pain of separation because I want to heal it, right? I want to be aware of the painful rhetoric because I want to solve it in my own life. I can just see Luna behind me. What are you doing? Are you making an appearance? She's some good news for you today. Micah says tense and sometimes numb. Yeah, that's really normal. I think the numbification of our culture is the norm. We've really normalized numbness. We've normalized paralysis. We've really normalized sitting in front and watching the news or consuming the news in a way that doesn't lead to any action, right? It's like you consume it and that's that, and now you know more, and now you can talk at a dinner party with some awareness of what's going on in the world. It's not, you know more, you know better, you can do better, you know? And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. Yeah. So what if the news felt good? It doesn't, for 3 reasons. These are my 3 little reasons that I came up with. So the first is the negativity bias, which we've talked about before. It's the reason I started Luminous Leanings, to lean toward the light, because it has to be a conscious, active decision to be positive as a human being. It takes effort. Someone said it's hard to be heavy, it's hard to be light, it's easier to be heavy. And I think about that a lot. Basically, negativity bias in a nutshell. So in our brain's evolution, we evolved to prioritize negative experiences over positive ones in an effort to protect ourselves, right? There's neuroscience behind this. And it's all to make sure that those negative experiences we can relive dozens of times a day in the hopes of avoiding them in the future. And the positive experiences by default kind of fade to the background. So Tara Brach says our mind is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive ones. She might not be the first person that quote's attributed to. She's the one that brought it into my purview. And I think it's so good, and it's so tragic. Sometimes just remembering that the reason I replay negativity and bad experiences, or I'm afraid of a bad experience in the future, is to protect myself. Reminding myself of that protection and inherent care behind it can help me relate to it better. But again, like the inner critic, like the inner controller, like the ego, this part that's trying to protect isn't going about it in the best way. So we can thank our ancestors, we can thank our brain's evolution, we can thank these forces that are trying to keep us safe. And we can consciously choose to be proactive about balancing things with positivity. And this is especially true with the news, dear ones. Okay? Because 100% of the news is negative. Like, if it bleeds, it leads. I hate that idiom, but it's so true. This is what it looks like in a capitalist culture where, you are rewarded based on the number of viewers. It's the same with social media, right? Like you are rewarded based on the number of people you're influencing. And I mean financially rewarded. Okay? So the blood that gets the leads gets the dollar signs, the eyeballs, your ears, your attention. Even just if it flicked by your screen as you were scrolling is money in their pocket. Okay? So everything is engineered to try to get you hooked, to try to get you addicted, to try to get you focused on this. And when you combine that with the negativity bias, it's like dynamite for your nervous system. It's addictive in two ways, right? It's addictive because it was engineered to be addictive, and it's addictive because it's negative. So a lot of these news channels, as you know, are feeding off of your negativity bias and your humanness and that raw part of you that just wants to stay alive and wants to keep your family safe. That's pretty twisted. And so to sort of wake up to that and then actively choose positive news sources, which we're going to talk about, we have a responsibility to do this. It's not going to be done for us. We have to curate what we consume, because what you consume, you become. What you consume, you become. I just heard Glennon Doyle say these words, and I was like, this is what I'm talking about tonight. This is perfect. And it's so true. They say you're made up of like the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, you best believe it's the same with our news consumption. Micah says capitalism is a hellscape. Yes, sister, preach. Preach. So, the 3 reasons. The negativity bias, 100% of the news is negative, is number 2. And number 3 is we don't act on it. This is why the news doesn't feel good, is because we don't actually take any action. Like I said, numbness is normalized. Paralysis is the order of the day. So if we're consuming all this news and we're not taking action, our human brain doesn't know what to do with that. Hi, Claire Bear. Like, when we are handed like a piece of information and we don't integrate it into our behavior, but it doesn't align with our values, like our psychology doesn't know what to do because we are constantly trying to reorganize our values and our actions to become in alignment. I don't remember what this concept is called in psychology. I apologize. But I think it's fascinating. So it's like you will go out of your way to do actions that align with your values. And if you can't, if you really see it as not worth it, then you will change your value as a result. Cognitive dissonance. Thank you, Micah. I knew I could count on you. Cognitive dissonance, another hellscape, she says. Yes, but also, like, let's hack it and use it to our advantage. I think it's really interesting. You know, I've been thinking a lot about this. So that's the third reason news consumption doesn't feel good. We don't act on it because we're either overstimulated and numb, we're paralyzed with overwhelm, or, you know, we don't understand a way out and how to take action based on our values with the information we've just learned. And so we just shut down and we change our values as a result. And we say, you know, the world's really not worth saving. I mean, look at my newsfeed. It's 100% negative, right? And so that must add up to the world's not worth saving, you know? Or I'm not worth doing anything about anything. Like, I, in some way, because I can't fix it all, then I just won't even try. I'm really interested in this as well as a byproduct of unworthiness, which y'all know is like my life's work, learning about unworthiness and how it keeps us stuck and how it holds us back from our full potential. And this is a classic example. Okay. So I think we have two tendencies of unhealthy news consumption. The first, and the one I fall under, is to bury my head in the sand and to just shut down and to just not consume. And that has been my tendency in the past. It's something I was very ashamed of. It was something I really tried to cover up and hide, especially because I worked in international affairs. So I had to like constantly find my way around this tendency, which was to bury my head in the sand. Because I was like, if I'm going to protect my heart and my mind and my energy, you know, the only thing I can do is just stop consuming news. And I was like, if I really need to hear it, I'll get it. And I've heard people in the self-care field speak like this. You know, I heard something yesterday, which actually made me want to talk on it because the thing for me is it's not good enough. Like, I want to be informed, and there's got to be a better way. And that's why we're dreaming together tonight. Like, what is this better way? So that's been my tendency. No news consumption at all when I'm like stressed or triggered. The other tendency, of course, is overconsumption. Is just consuming, consuming, consuming with no boundaries, with no intention, with no clarity, with no action, you know, attached to it. And complete emotional hijacking as a result, complete nervous system hijacking as a result. Often this goes on under the surface, and then we wonder why, you know, we're not sleeping, why our digestion is poor, why we're depressed, why we're anxious. Like, it's no wonder. I think that this tendency is either more popular or it's more celebrated in our society. And I've thought about this, like, people are praised and rewarded for over-consuming news because we live in a capitalist system that rewards our overconsumption of anything, anything that puts money in someone's pocket, right? Right? So there's not a lot of shame attached to overconsumption in a capitalist culture. And yet people are starting to wake up to the fact that this is really hurting us. Stress is killing us. We've said it before, in a developed society like the US, for example, you know, the cause of death isn't going to necessarily be poverty on average. But stress has really climbed the ranks in terms of negative human outcomes. So it's really interesting. I think news consumption has a lot to do with that. People are getting better and better at keeping your eyeballs glued to your phones. It's getting harder and harder to unplug. It's getting harder and harder to justify resting, to set those boundaries. So let's get into it. Why it matters. We've said what you consume, you become. Number one reason it matters, in my opinion. And number two, I think this impact over intention is really interesting. Rachel Ricketts, she's a racial justice advocate. She handed this to me. This is where it comes from. Impact over intention. So what this means, she was speaking specifically for anti-racism work, but the idea is that it doesn't really matter where your heart's at if your impact isn't there, you know? And I think it's the same with the news. Like you can fancy yourself a good person and fancy yourself an informed, good little, voter, which is great. But if you're consuming all this negative news, and some of it is accurate, for example, what just happened in Lebanon, the explosion, absolutely horrible. What's happening in the US, this racial uprising, and the reckoning that's happening in white America, there are things that we have to reckon with. There are things we have to really digest and metabolize, but not for the sake of just digesting and metabolizing, but to actually take action. So impact over intention is why consuming news matters, because it can help inform our impact. Hopefully, if we're not left these like zombie news consumers who are like tricked into being so overwhelmed that they never actually take any action. Because God forbid we like dismantle the whole system. And the third reason this matters is because just being informed matters. Like we said, if you're going to vote, if you're going to take political action, if you're going to be a contributing member of society, being informed matters, and information is power, right? So there's part of us, just like in the meditation when we checked in, there's a part of us that cares about the news. We care about our world. We care about relating to others. We care about our belonging and our place in this world. We care about people suffering, and when we're cut off from that caring, I think the news is handed to us in a way that keeps us separate from that caring. It can leave us feeling very confused about our own caring and ability to care and our compassion, right? Is this resonating? I'd love to hear. I know I've just got Micah and Claire live on the call, but I'd love to hear kind of what your thoughts are so far, since it's just the three of us here, dear ones, live. So what are the solutions? So disclaimer, not everyone's solutions are going to look alike. Some people do need to consume more news because of their job. I think about my friends who are journalists and some of the things that they've told me about their news consumption, and I still think they should have boundaries around it for their self-care. I think it's essential, like especially if you're a journalist. But everyone's news consumption is going to look different, and some people, because of their society or where they live, they might need to consume news in a different way. They might not have the same access to news. It is a privilege, even though we think it should be a right. And the internet's gone a long way in connecting people. to resources and to information, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But depending on your context, these solutions to your news consumption are going to look different. And again, the tendencies, keeping the tendencies in mind. Do you tend to underconsume or overconsume the news or social media? You can swap news for social media as a response to stress. That's what we're talking about tonight. All right, so what are the solutions? So I've got 3 that I want to walk us through tonight, and I'll just tell you what they are right off the bat. Boundaries, rituals, and actions. I think we might do boundaries, actions, and then rituals last, because we're going to actually create our own news ritual. Hi, Brenna. Welcome, dear one. So glad you're here. All right. So first, I'm going to check in on the chat. Micah says, I think for me, I just need to be more intentional about when and how I consume news and information rather than mindlessly scrolling and then getting stressed out about the state of the world. Yeah, absolutely. So the question is, how do we mindlessly stop scrolling? How do we set that intention and hold ourselves accountable? That's really beautiful, Micah. Thank you. Brenna says, this is definitely resonating. I struggle with the balance of keeping up with the news. Too much makes me angry at everyone, it seems, whereas not enough leaves me feeling uninformed. That's exactly where I am. For sure, for sure. And that's why I wanted to talk about it, because people will touch on it from time to time, but no one's ever actually walked me through like setting rituals around my news consumption. So I thought it'd be interesting. I hope it continues to resonate, dear ones. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. It's cool that we all care about this. You know, we all care about loving ourselves enough to set that boundary of what we allow in and out. All right, so boundaries. Number 1, the first thing. So we have to set a boundary around our news consumption. I mean, I keep bumping the microphone. Sorry. That's absolutely number 1. Okay, so what is a boundary? It's a when, where, how, and what. So when are you going to consume the news? Like when in your day? Someone in my Buddhist community taught me to not consume any news before I meditate for the day. And that's been like really, really beautiful for me. Because as I mentioned, I'm on the tendency to not consume. And so the way I would build it into my life would be to do it in the morning, which is when I do a lot of things that I have to sort of ensure get done for that day. But she was like, no, like try meditating before you consume any news. And it's been really, really good for my meditation practice, actually. But find what works for you. Like, when do you think you should be consuming the news? You know, and maybe for you, if you tend to overconsume, the question is like, when am I not going to consume? Because I'm consuming from the moment I wake up, in the bed, you know, on the phone, and then I'm taking it into my day, and it's getting mixed in when I have a zillion tabs open throughout the day at work. You know, the news is combined with my personal life, is combined with my work, and it's so intertwined that I'm not conscious of anything. I'm just sort of a drop of water being tossed by the waves, you know, and I'm letting these things wash over me, and I'm letting everything happen to me. That doesn't feel good. That doesn't feel good. So really set that boundary. When are you going to consume news? I would recommend just designating one time in the day that you're going to allow yourself to consume the news. So if your partner has a habit of constantly having the news on TV or having the radio on, like, you're going to have some difficult conversations around this. You know, I know when I go home to be with my parents, like, they watch the 6 o'clock evening news every single night. So that's got to be my news time. Or I can ask, you know, could we do something else? And maybe you could watch that later. So for me now, I consume news just before lunch or sometimes just after lunch, but it's sort of it's rolled into my lunch break. And my news consumption, because again, I tend to underconsume, it's easy for me to set a boundary of like 20 minutes max. That might be like outrageous for some people. That might be crazy. So figure out where you're at. You could even just keep a journal over the next 5 days and just write down how much time you're spending and what kinds of news is coming through and how it's making you feel. Tracking is a great first step because it leads to awareness, which leads to change. So set that boundary: when, the time of day, and for how long. And then where are you going to consume it? If you're rolling this into your daily rituals and habits, what would be the best environment for you to consume the news in? And remember, you're often going on like a difficult quest to consuming the news. The road is laden with landmines and dangerous obstacles. 100% of it is negative because we haven't even talked about curating for positive news yet. So we're talking about, traditional news sites. So if it's going to be hard and scary and often painful when you're an awakened heart on the spiritual path of self-love, so you're a sensitive soul, you're an empath, you know, if you know it's going to be difficult, how can you make it lovelier? How can you make it gentler? This is always my question for self-compassion. How can I make this difficult experience feel a little bit better, a little bit more nurturing? So I'm usually at my desk when I consume the news. I'm not going to take my phone into the bedroom, or I'm not going to take my laptop onto the couch or turn on the TV like looking for the news. That's not how I consume it, because that kind of blurs the boundaries for me, especially now when I'm working from home, right? So where are you going to consume it? And then how? Which channels? Which news outlets do you trust, to inform you, to have the most reliable sourcing, and to not trigger you? I think that's another lens we can sort of hold our news outlets to. Okay, so finding those. For me, the only thing I do every day consistently is I read a collection of news headlines that have been put together called The Skimm, Skimm. I highly recommend it. These two ladies basically scour the interwebs and send an email. I think it's every morning at like 4 a.m. or something. And it comes to my inbox and it has world news, US news, and like there's always like some fun things mixed in. So it's not actually 100% negative, but I trust that I'm getting the highlights. So I recommend something like that. But then the next piece is, what are you consuming? Like what medium? So you really have to know yourself here. Are you triggered more by watching something like on the TV or on the phone, like a video, by reading it, or by listening, like as a podcast or a radio episode? My mother-in-law was actually the one, Diane, if you're watching the replay, hi. She was the one that really got me thinking about the medium of the news, because she would say, like, I felt it different in my body when I was watching a video as opposed to when I would read it. And I was like, that is so true. Reading, you can do at your own pace. You can click on the links and like verify the sources. It's a very different experience. And then the other thing I do from time to time is I listen to a podcast called The Daily. It's from the New York Times. And I really like the way they go deep on an issue that matters. It's usually U.S. context. It helps me feel like I had that skim of the email, and then I went deep on like one issue that I now know more about, you know, and it feels good. It feels good to learn. That's the plus side of the news. We love to learn new things. Again, we're trying to keep ourselves safe. So that's what I do, dear ones. But know yourself, know what triggers you and how you best can take in the news. And then finally, you know, you've got to read between the lines here with your boundary. Turning off news notifications, turning off news alerts. Like, once you have that boundary and you're committed to it, like, this is the only way I consume the news within reason, you know, but really, like, holding firm, like, you're not going to seek it out, right? Outside of your boundary. And if you're getting news alerts 20 times a day, then you are seeking it out because you have set that up or you haven't turned it off. So that absolutely has to be part of your boundary. And I love setting boundaries with my phone. Just in general, hiding my phone from myself is so much fun. You know, taking a detox from the phone. I always say, tell your mama first. Tell your mama, or you're going to be hearing about it. Like, mama, I'm going to be off my phone this weekend. Everything's okay. But really finding those breaks. Oh my gosh. And just go out and earth or something. Take off your shoes and stand on the earth. That's a great way to have a boundary from the stuff the news is made of, the negativity, the stress. So turn off those notifications. Don't let it find you. Don't seek it out. And then what can you add in? I put this under boundaries because I didn't know where else to put it. But curating your content is a boundary. You know, we think of boundaries as the absence of the thing that we're trying to quit. But you can also curate it, right? So in the same way you might curate your social media feed to be diverse in color and body type, in all of these things. You can curate your news. You can seek out positive news. So I have a few sources here that I love. So 1000 Awesome Things is a great news site. I love TED Talks. You know, ideas worth spreading. That's positive. And then happynews.com. HuffPost has a good news segment. And the Happiness Project is a great site from Gretchen Rubin. She's the one that said it's easy to be heavy, it's harder to be light. She's the one, Gretchen Rubin. That's right. And then if you guys haven't yet seen John Krasinski's YouTube channel, Some Good News, oh my gosh, your life is about to change. You're gonna cry a lot. This started up with a pandemic, and John was so excited to show me, my husband, because he was like, you know, this is right up your alley. You're always trying to seek positive news. And I was like, well, somehow I still end up just as emotionally hijacked, but at least it's for the right reasons. Because it's just really beautiful. It was like, well, you just have to watch it. Some Good News, John Krasinski. Oh, so good. What are your favorites? I think Good News Movement is another one. I think I follow them on Instagram. And all they share is positive news, you know, because this shit gets left out. Like sometimes there might be a human interest piece, you know, at the end of like the nightly news or something. But in general, it doesn't exist in our news, in our traditional news consumption. So we have to seek it out. We have to add it in. So that's all around boundaries. Tell me, dear ones, what boundary are you excited to set? Make it specific, make it time bound, make it sustainable. You've heard of SMART goals. Set a SMART boundary. For example, mine, I will only read the skim on my lunch break at my desk, and I will spend no more than 20 minutes seeking out news during the day during this time. Period. That's it. What is yours? Please share it. I'd love to hear. You might inspire someone else listening to the replay or here tonight. Okay, so number 2, ritual. This is what I was thinking, dear ones. Actually, let's go to action and then ritual. Sorry. I have it mixed up in my notes. So, action is so important. As Micah said, cognitive dissonance. This is a thing. Like we can't handle it when we're handed something but we don't take action. We don't know how to make sense of it. So, every time, I would really challenge you. If it has to be every week instead of every day, that's fine. But really think about every time you consume the news, what's one action you can take as a result? This is going to be built into our ritual, just like the boundary. But what's one action you can take? And an action could be donating a little bit of money. I donated to a friend's nonprofit on the ground in Lebanon when the blast happened. I was so fortunate to just be like, hey, I know someone working there. Like, what are you doing? And I could share the news about her organization. If you want to take a look at my personal page on Facebook at Ellen Gilbert Coaches, or just Google Sawa for Development and Aid, SAWA. That's her organization. She's amazing. And I was able to give a little money and spread the word. It felt great. You know, that's impact over intention right there. Putting your money where your mouth is like effective altruism. And if more people did this and didn't just feel stuck, paralyzed, worthless, or that the world wasn't worth saving, we could actually make a freaking difference. And some people are. I also love Glennon Doyle's organization, Together Rising. I donate to them a lot. But yeah, I'm proud to say I open my wallet several times a week. I really do. And it really didn't start consistently until I started my anti-racism circle, which I'll talk about here in a moment. I know we're running out of time. I'm so surprised I had a lot to say on this topic. I'm really passionate about making an impact in the world and how the way we relate to the world through the news can really affect our nervous systems and our quality of life. Anywho, so donating is great. And then another way you can act is just, can you spread the word? You know, maybe you can't open your wallet at this time. Although I think really everyone can give a little bit here and there. It feels great. And you start to become a more flexible, relational, generous person. You start to actually receive more blessings. That's a whole other topic for another day. But can you spread the word? Can you share it on your social media networks? Can you continue the conversation? Maybe it's just committing like, hey, this issue is really important to me and I just learned something that I wouldn't have otherwise. Who can I talk to about this? Can I commit to, next time I talk to my mom on the phone, bringing this up or teaching someone this? Can I commit to having a, intentional conversation with a loved one about this thing that I just learned? And trying to do it, in a way that's not attacking them, in a way that's really from that kind, loving, compassionate heart that you want to extend to yourself. You can't help but extend that outward. And what I find is that I feel a lot less divisive and ego-driven when I'm informed and when I've taken a moment to set my intention. Yeah, my ego tends to come up when I don't actually have all the facts and when I'm just reacting because I haven't really held space for myself to do the unpacking and do the work. Interesting. So what else can you do? Political action, of course, voting, calling or writing your lawmakers. There are so many great actions. Signing petitions. I know Claire on the call created her own petition recently and she got tons of signatures and made an impact. And I'm so proud of her. Like, there's so much you can do. So stop saying there's nothing you can do because there's definitely something you can do. And then the last one is start a community. So I mentioned my anti-racism circle. I'll just say very quickly, I got so sick and tired of being like, I should do this thing. I should put my money where my mouth is. I should read this thing. But I just wasn't doing it because I wasn't in community. And what I mean by that is I needed accountability. I needed to be witnessed on my journey. And that's nothing to be ashamed of. We all need to be witnessed, and we need to do the witnessing. We need to hold the space. So I finally was like, screw it. I'm starting my own community, and we're going to every week come together and we do one unlearning, which is like reading an article or watching a film. We are always reading a book. So there's like every fourth meeting, we do a book club. And then we always do a political action every week. And this was all from that great list that went viral, the 50 things white people can do for anti-racism right now, I think it's called. Just Google it. Or maybe it's 75. I think it's 75 things. And it's all based on this list. And we just randomize for an action every week. And then we make a donation every week. So every single person in the circle makes a donation. The size doesn't matter. It could be $1, you know? The point is that's $1 more than they were given the week before. So impact over intention, you know? Starting the community changed my life. I could probably have a whole other talk on my anti-racism circle and how amazing it is. But that is like a big thing you could do would be to get, you know, maybe a giving circle or, you know, the book club around the issue that you're most passionate around. But think about how you could incorporate community into your actions. You don't have to do this alone. You're worthy of belonging. You already belong. You're not separate, right? And so the last piece, dear ones, is the ritual. How can we turn all of this into a ritual? So the boundary begins, you know, the time is set, the space is set, you've got your medium, you're gonna consume some news. Before you do that, set your intention. This is the way to start every ritual. You bring your hands to heart center. Breathe in and out a few times. Drop into your body. Notice how you feel. What a radical act to just notice how you feel in your body, to get connected before you consume the news. Can you imagine? Maybe your intention is to not get hijacked, you know? Like, I'm not allowed to get emotionally hijacked by this, but I am allowed to feel authentically, genuinely the grief that comes with having an awakened heart, as long as I take action as a result. That's my intention when I consume the news, is to really notice that subtle difference between my nervous system is hijacked and I'm panicking because I don't know what to do, and oh, I have a really tender heart about this. This is a tragedy. There's grief here. There's sorrow here. I can hold space for my grief. And I can acknowledge that I have grief over people's suffering that I will never meet. We have to acknowledge this. This is to acknowledge our relationality, our connectedness, our belonging. You know, I like to say we're all fingers of the same hand. It's so cheesy, but it's so true. We can feel other people's pain and suffering. We have these mirror neurons. This is a good thing to tap into. How can we strengthen our empathy while holding those boundaries? You know, because empathy fatigue is a real thing. Compassion, on the other hand, has boundaries because it includes self-compassion and flows out from there. That I just said a lot, but set your intention and then consume the news in the way you've set for yourself. Always noticing, well, how did that make me feel in my body? Checking back in. What a radical concept again. And noticing where your mind's at as well. Are you simply learning something to learn it? Do you have emotions coming up as a result? The awareness is key. and then decide on one thing you can do, one action you can take, when your 20 minutes is up or whatever it is for you. Is it maybe just to make a note? Maybe you keep a running note of like the one thing that really stuck out to you, and then on the weekend, you look over it and decide on one action that kind of encompasses everything. But I guarantee, dear ones, once you start taking action as a result of what came up in your body and your heart when you read the news, you're going to feel like a completely different way about the world. You're going to feel connected. You're going to feel like you matter. You're going to feel like you have an impact. You're going to feel powerful and empowered and compassionate. You're going to feel conscious and aware. You're going to connect to that part of you that loves all beings everywhere, that belongs to the world. So it's really important to consume the news with these rituals in place. Micah says, that's interesting. In social work, we talk about compassion fatigue, but maybe empathy fatigue would be a more accurate term. Exactly, Micah. This is something Tara Brach talks about. Hi, Anna. Welcome. So yes, the difference between empathy and compassion is boundaries. Boundaries is so key. Compassion flows from within. It starts and includes self within the self-compassion, within the compassion for others. And without boundaries, without self-compassion, there is no genuine compassion. There is no authentic, relational, open, awake heart compassion. Okay? So yes. So that's the ritual I urge you to create. If you have a moment, go ahead and let me know what is going to be your ritual around consuming the news and reacting to the news and attaching to the news. Set your boundaries, set your intention, check in with your body, and finally decide on one action you can take as a result. I think that about covers it, dear ones. I know I kind of flew through that at the very end. Are there any questions? I know my Instagram is about to end, but on Facebook we can stay and chat a bit if anyone has any questions for me. What are your big takeaways? What are you excited to put into action immediately? I don't want passive sermon viewers. I want active, proactive, intentional, conscious, awake people here. And I'm thinking about how I can even take my ritual and my boundary a step further, And to be honest, I don't know if it is going to be taking action every single day or if it's going to be maybe just sitting and holding space after I've consumed something. And of course, it depends on what I've consumed and how it's making me feel, what my action will be. Maybe the action can be holding space and doing some self-care immediately after. Brenna says, biggest intention I need, setting an intention in who and why I talk about news with. Yes, dear Brenna, we didn't even really touch on those important conversations and how difficult they can be, especially when you come from a family that has different views. That can be one of the most painful experiences, I think, in this life. Brenna says, listening to the daily for 20 minutes in the morning feels light yet informative. I want to notice how my body feels during it next time. Yeah. I think that's key, dear one. Your body keeps the score and it's going to tell you, how was this for me? What was this like? And what do I need? Which is what self-love is all about. It's tuning in to the need and then acting on it. That is self-love. That is self-care. That is self-compassion, which is when our self-care meets our suffering. Beautiful. Thank you, Brenna. All right, dear ones, let's just take a moment, taking a deep breath in and let it out. Bringing the hands to heart center. Taking a few deep breaths in and out at your own pace. May you, me, all beings everywhere be awakened, be free, come home to the truth of their belonging and their worthiness. Deep breath in and let it go. Namaste, dear ones. Thank you for being here. Thank you for gathering. Thank you for caring about self-care. Thank you for awakening into a conscious consumer, not just of news, but social media and all things. In this capitalist society, it is a radical act to be awake. It is a radical act to be intentional. It is a radical act to be aware of your own body and experience. And I'm just so proud of you. It feels really good to know I'm not alone. Thank you so much, dear ones. Sending you so much love and light. Have a great night. And good luck with your news consumption ritual and boundaries in the future. Don't consume news before bed. That is the one thing I'll say. All right. Bye.